Dan, what did Indiana prove by upsetting the Dream in this first round series?
Quality depth. I mean, you look at the performances. Of course, Aliyah did not score as significantly in this series, but I believe that she is the straw that stirs the drink of that team. And that puts me at odds with a lot of people because there's a lot of negative sentiment about her game because of how physical she is. But she is a connective playmaker. She's one of their most solid defenders. She's their best rebounder. And she's typically their second leading scorer. So when you look at quality depth, and then I think that's more of a general statement about the quality of depth in women's professional basketball more than anything else, because I'm looking at some of these players who were not on rosters and they are playing a significant role in a semifinalist team. So I just sat there thinking about, when areas healed up and when there are 2 additional teams next year, Odyssey and Aerie have to have roster spots, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So I think it is more of a statement about their buy-in and their collective culture as a team. And again, there are going to be a lot of feelings about, associating anything positive cultural with the Indiana Fever, but they're locked in with one another. Yeah. They are doing whatever it takes to win. There does not seem to be a lot of ego in the on-court product. And man, the level of grit and effort and determination to get this done, it's just kudos. And then maybe it just proves the level of coach that Stephanie White is as well. It was cracking me up, that one montage of her just screaming a bunch of times. And I posted a video. I said, yeah, this is basically like me getting my kids trying to clean their toy room. But they buy in. So, they are responding to her and the amount of quality depth. I think those are the 2 things that come to mind more than anything else.
Yeah, I had Stephanie White down. One of the things I think they proved is that they have one of the best coaches in the league, and that's kind of what Steph White has proven. But through her team, I saw the post-game presser with her and Natasha Howard and Kelsey Mitchell, and Natasha Howard was just going in about Stephanie White and how she empowers her, empowers every member of the team. Whenever you hear players like really outspoken about how the head coach empowers them, that lets you know that there's real empowerment going on, and that the coach and what they are saying and doing is really a reflection of how the team is playing. So, and we saw this kind of play from Connecticut in Stephanie White's last couple years in Connecticut, where she has built up that gritty, tough-minded kind of culture that we saw in Connecticut. It's what I said the LA Sparks are missing right now, Marcus. I think they're 1 or 2 years away, because I think the main component they're missing is just in terms of personnel and just identity, a little more grit and toughness. I think a lot of the things when you look at Indiana and why they've been successful without Caitlin, it speaks to it's a lot of things that like you have to watch the games to really appreciate and understand, because they're not like major stat box score things, not major advanced stat things. Like they're doing some nice things defensively and all, and rebounding the ball, but like you have to watch how they compete. I kept texting Marcus during the game. I'm like, dude, they're not going anywhere. This team just fights and competes. And like when you talk about teams like that, listen, Golden State fights and competes, but you know what Golden State doesn't have? A Kelsey Mitchell or an Aliyah Boston. 2 just proven star level players and talents that can do things that other players can't do. So I just think Indy had proved that they have a toughness and a grit and an attentiveness. Like I said, when you watch Indiana's 5 players on a defensive possession, when the offensive team comes across half court, just watch where Indiana's players' eyes and hands are. Everyone is attentive, ready to move, ready to help. Like there's an alertness and attentiveness that all great, like defensive connected teams have to have, but they just battle, man. They have a belief in them, which again, I'm pointing all the way back up to the head coach. Like they won the Commissioner's Cup. They beat Minnesota, who has been largely regarded the best team in the league all year. They did that without Caitlin. Like for them to be this good without Caitlin, I think it says a few things, but the number one thing for me is Stephanie White is really showing what she can do as a head coach with this group.
So I think the answer to this question depends on who's answering the question. Because for me, as someone who has watched the Fever since before Caitlin Clark, right? Like, this win doesn't prove much more to me. Because Martin and I, before Caitlin was drafted, when we knew that it was obvious that Caitlin would be drafted by Indiana, we were saying on the show, it seemed like every week, the Fever have talented players. Like, yes, they did just draft Aliyah Boston first the year before, but they have talented players, right? So to see Kelsey Mitchell go out here and perform the way that she performed, to see Natasha Howard play the way that she played, Aliyah Boston play not super duper surprising. I actually went on Threads and I said that I was more surprised about the way that Atlanta unraveled twice in those last two games than I was about the way that Indiana played in those games, right? So that wasn't surprising. But what I will say that Indiana did prove, this is much bigger than them, I think. I think the Fever in this series proved that there is more than enough talent in the WNBA, not just for there to be more teams and for them to expand, but for there to be more roster spots on these teams. And I think that might be like a really weird and a really abstract takeaway, but I think back to when it was initially announced that Golden State was going to be added to the league, and I was at my dad's house and we're talking about it, and I said, Dad, like, expansion is good. And next is more roster spots because you need enough roster spots and enough teams to house all these players. And he said, yeah, well, if there's more talented players coming down the pipeline, you're still always going to have these problems, which is a valid argument. But when you go out here and you watch an Indiana Fever team who is minus Caitlin Clark, minus Sid Colson, minus Ari McDonald, minus Sophie Cunningham, minus Chloe Bibby, like players who they had to sign because of injuries, they ended up losing because of injuries. To see them pick up an Aerial Powers, to see them pick up an Odyssey Sims, and to see this team with this talent who didn't have a lot of time really together down the stretch of the season to still go and beat the number 3 team in the WNBA twice, blowing them out in game 2 and then beating them in game 3 when they were down for most of that game. Like, that shows that there is enough talent in this league to justify expansion and to justify the expansion of the roster. So, like, from the Indiana component, for me personally, because I was always of the mindset that there is more talent on this team than Caitlin Clark, and that they could go out here and be competitive without Caitlin Clark and all of those things, them winning isn't really surprising, because all of my shock is to just the way that Atlanta unraveled, right? Martin, you remember, I thought Carlos Mesco had a good shot to be coach of the year because of how well he looked this season, all the improvements, but I think Indiana proved something bigger for the entire WNBA. And ironically, when Martin and I were talking a little bit ago, and we were talking about, like, Fee had just gotten hurt and Stewie and JJ were kind of injured, and then we were talking about which team would benefit the most from those teams being injured, I said Indiana, because if the Indiana Fever are one of the last 4 teams left, that does great things for the WNBA. Ironically, they're one of the last 4 teams left. They're doing it without Caitlin Clark, but still, that means good things for the WNBA because it proves to the people who aren't normally tapped in that there's a lot of talent in this league. And
and Fever fans should be ecstatic. I mean, Fever fans ought to be, and I'm sure they were going through all kinds of emotions and feelings, wondering if they could do it with her, without her, or whatever. But they should be. I mean, this also proves to them that they are building a championship culture. For them to be this good and this formidable and competitive and tough, like Stephanie White building this culture of toughness and grit with or without Caitlin. I might even argue without Caitlin there, it might end up better. I don't want to say better in the long run. I just think that it's really established. And the fact that they have won their first playoff series in a decade and have been this good without Caitlin, it should be very encouraging to be like, wow, what can we be with Caitlin? What happens if when we get Caitlin back healthy and back in Caitlin mode in this style, in this culture, with this way that we know we can play? So it has to be very encouraging for them.
Can we just talk about the general resilience of the roster, right?
Yeah.
They were 12 12-10 in their first 22 games, and Caitlin was injured in that game against Connecticut. They finished their last 22 games 12-10. So for them to be able to eke out a similar baseline of performance with radically different roster constructions at multiple points of the year. The other thing worth mentioning in my mind, though, is that I think AB, Natasha, and Kelsey Mitchell all played all 44 games. So even amid all of the chaos, there were some real stalwart presences that sustained a level of respectable basketball, even when adversity hit. So I think this is a deeply intriguing team because of what y'all are saying. There's this magnetism to Caitlin Clark for the broader kind of newer fan base. But what they have between their walls is special in terms of the quality depth. And I'm excited to see them have an opportunity to display that more. And yeah, the arrow's got to be pointing way up, you would have to say.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm just going to say, like, I'm not going to give Caitlin credit for what other players are doing, of course, but we know that Caitlin has a big influence on the fandom and the energy behind Indiana Fever basketball ever since she got there. And there are fans right now today supporting that team, even with her not playing, because of her. They're going to the game. They're still selling out the games and stuff. Not to say they're selling out just because of her, that it's the team that's still performing. But the aura of the Indiana Fever starts with Caitlin Clark. And she was the one who created that momentum of fandom for them since she's been there. And so I think even with her giving players confidence, like, you know, I know there's been different kinds of discourse about Caitlin's antics on the sideline and all that stuff. But in terms of how she treats her teammates, you see her up, clapping, yelling, like she putting stuff on Instagram, like, here we come. Like, she is so imagine being Lexi Hall or Brianna Turner or Shea Petty or one of these players, and you got Caitlin Clark in your ear, like, yo, shoot that thing. Like, do your thing, be you, like, compete, you know? So there's a lot of competitive aura that they've been able to create, from the head coach to even Caitlin herself. It really is fascinating. Like, it really is fascinating and impressive.
We're going to shift gears and dive a little bit deeper into the Fever's matchup against the Aces. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and come back on the other side.
Yo, shout out to my brother Martin over there, man. Basketball Society YouTube channel, Protect Our Queens podcast. Yes, man. Shout out to the WNBA. We love y'all, and we got to keep showing them love, okay? History is literally repeating itself right now. We got Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, okay? Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, a big rivalry, crazy going on right now today in our game. We got to show them some love. It's a lot of dudes today that couldn't do half the stuff that they do. We got to give them that love. Now, let me explain something to you. A lot of layups, okay? A lot of three-point shooting. That's what you're going to get, okay? But we got to protect our queens at the end of the day. What are we talking about? Protect them. They deserve it.
Lots of layups, lots of three-point shooting.
And you know what's ironic, Marcus? In basketball, generally, whoever's playing, it's generally a good amount of layups and a good amount of three-point shots, especially now.
Especially in the NBA.
Especially nowadays, especially in the NBA.
That mid-range is, you know, like a delicate product, right?
Yeah.
Exclusive.
Right.
Yeah, that's a fact. So we switch gears now from the Indiana Fever pulling off an upset against the Atlanta Dream to now going into a best-of-5 series starting tomorrow against the Las Vegas Aces. And the question becomes, Dan, how can the Fever push Vegas? And I'd like to just add on to that, just on the spot, because we saw the Storm push Vegas last series as well. I mean, Martin mentioned the Storm very easily could have won that series. Do you think the Fever can push Vegas in the same way or to the same extent that we saw Seattle push them in the last round?
I think they can. I do not know if they will. The individual that I saw on the screen there a second ago, Kelsey Mitchell, I think is the key to this series. I just put together a compilation of 5 minutes of her turning the corner and making ridiculously difficult layups over massive defenders. Obviously, it's a different kind of story when the back line there is Asia Wilson. but I think she will present issues for the entire guard fleet of Las Vegas. Not to say that Jackie can't defend or that Dana Evans is not also fast, but I think they're going to need a big series from her, and they're going to need to help her hunt her looks in order for them to have a chance in this series. And she's shown us for an entire year now, and now an initial playoff series, that she's up to the challenge. So I would guess that this is a 4-game series. That would be my guess. But yeah, I think it's possible. I just think it's less likely from the standpoint of Seattle didn't deal with the injury issues that Indiana has. And at the end of the day, they got to rely upon NECA and Skylar and Slim and freaking Dom Malonga acting like she's just the amount of growth that woman has shown just within her rookie season. So I think they can. I think they have it within them, but they also have not faced the Las Vegas Aces as they are presently constructed and playing. And I think that might be a shock to the system come game 1 tomorrow.
Just a quick point on Malunga, because I did want to say something about her. I mean, if Seattle is making sure that she is their future, that is a huge bright spot for them. I was just thinking about, Marcus, how Malunga, remember what Ziggy told us from Women's Hoops Masterclass, and he's been watching Malunga, Dan, since her days in France. Like, he came on with us before the draft to give us some insight into her, because everyone was saying this girl, the French girl Malunga, is going to be a top 3 pick. Most of us hadn't really seen much film on her. We were just starting to kind of see stuff. Our guy Ziggy, Women's Hoops Masterclass, he had eyes on her, brought some film, gave us some insight. He told us straight up, she'll be the best player in the league one day. Her prime is 10 years from now. Told us that straight up. And I was just thinking, Marcus, think about how Malunga, and Dan, I saw the thread you put up about the progression of her stats from like the first 12 games to like the next 20. And the numbers show her progression. But man, Marcus, I was thinking about how she just spent a whole year with NECA. Her first playoff series was against Asia Wilson. You don't think she's going to remember that experience? And she had some big moments in that series. I think game 3, she got a little sped up and she didn't shoot as well. Game 2, she had a killer game in game 2. I mean, beating Asia on rim runs, right? A couple and one. She had a big bucket late in that game. Game 3, I think the speed of things and the moment kind of got to her. She didn't play as well. But man, Malunga showed us enough moments this season where more people need to be aware of what could be coming with her, man. The more I watched her, the more I saw comfort with her turnaround, with her pace, with the timing of things. Like, man, her motor and her athleticism are scary. And then you add on to it her skill set. Her skill set is going to polish up in the next couple of years, and we're going to see something very, very special, I think. I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to add, I had that on my mind about Malunga. I was just thinking that, Marcus. I'm like, man, she just spent a whole year playing with NECA. Her very first playoff series was against Asia Wilson. That I don't think that can be overlooked. She's going to remember that. To answer this real quick, I do think AB is going to be the key here. I think Aliyah Boston's physicality and her ability to muck things up is one of the only ways that Indiana can give themselves a chance competitively here, because that is what can, I don't want to say slow down, but at least occupy Asia a little bit. I think the AB and Asia matchup here is crucial and key. Obviously, anyone trying to beat Vegas has to think about how to possibly slow down Asia or contain her, and that's the focal point of everything. I think Indiana with Aliyah Boston, and frankly, even with Natasha Howard, who's going to help her out a little bit in that sense. But AB specifically with her physicality, you touched on it, Dan. She's even getting flack for it now because the game gets mucked up and a little ugly, because she knows how to use her body. She's physical. And if you don't know how to use your body and be physical back, she's going to draw a foul on you, or she might just foul you because she wants to own her space. Right. And I think that is just a factor to look at as to, can that wear out Asia a little bit? Can that slow them down? Can that create some even some frustration with Asia, right? Can that knock her off a little bit? So That's the main thing I'm looking at with this. And I think that's the way Indy can push them, as if AB is pushing and moving things around and trying to get Asia at least a little bit frustrated.
So I was prepared to agree with Martin and go all in on the Aliyah Boston, Asia Wilson point. But then I started thinking about the fact that, number one, the last time these two teams shared a floor was in Indiana, and Asia Wilson was the only person to score more than 6 points in that game.
That's right.
And that was the game before the switch flipped. I believe that was the last game that Jewel Lloyd started, right? And then we know how the season ended, right? So not only have the Fever not seen the Aces as presently constructed, hot, and with this new setup of Jewel coming off the bench, the Aces haven't seen this version of the Fever either, because they didn't have aerial powers at that point in time.
True. Right.
And if I remember correctly, I don't believe Ari McDonald was hurt at that time.
I think she played. I think she was in that game. Yeah.
Ari McDonald's not there. Sophie Cunningham, I think, may or may not have been hurt before that.
Yeah.
So there are several players on the Indiana side of things who were in that game who have since gotten hurt, who are no longer on the team. And there are players who are on the team now who weren't at that time. So both of these teams, I think this series is interesting, unlike the Phoenix-Minnesota series, where those two teams have film against each other throughout the course of their regular season matchups. They can look at and pick out certain things. These two teams don't have that. So you really only have the 3 games from the first round and the games from the second half of the series to really look at and figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work, and how to win. I do think this is going to come down to Kelsey Mitchell. But more importantly, I think this is going to come down to how Vegas's guards handle Kelsey Mitchell. Because we know that Jackie Young, more often than not, I picked that picture for a reason. Jackie Young is generally guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. So Jackie Young's going to have the Kelsey Mitchell matchup. But aside from that, even when you expand it and just look at all of the guards possibly, factoring into this equation, you've got Kelsey Mitchell on Indiana's side. You've got Odyssey Sims on that side as well. You have even Lexi Hall on that side as well, who isn't really a guard. She's more of like a wing player, but she still factors in that to me. On the Vegas side, you have Chelsea Gray, you have Jewel Lloyd, you have Jackie Young. But you also even take a look at someone like Dana Evans, who I think is probably going to see the floor a lot more off the bench than she did in the previous series, because they're going to need someone on the floor who can counteract or at least match the quickness of Kelsey Mitchell on both sides of the ball. Like, I think they're going to need that. So this is going to come down essentially to, in my opinion, it's going to come down to which guard group plays better. And I know that Vegas has the better guard group. They have the more talented guard group, but we just saw in the last series that doesn't matter, because the Dream had the better guard group in that series as well. But the Fever were able to pick apart where they need to pick apart and get a win there. I don't think the Aces will get unraveled. In fact, I know they won't get unraveled the way that Atlanta did, because they've been here before, right? So so the Fever are going to have to not do what they did in game 1 against the Dream, where they got completely unraveled down the stretch. Stephanie White ended up getting a tech late in that game. Natasha Howard, they just completely unraveled in that game, even though things were still kind of close. It's going to be interesting, I think, specifically how they handle Kelsey Mitchell. And I would imagine a scenario where we see Dana Evans on the floor a lot to assist Jackie Young with the Kelsey Mitchell responsibility. Because Jackie Young can certainly out-physical Kelsey Mitchell. We know, she can out-physical just about any guard and any wing in the W. She is, we know that. But I think they're going to need the assistance of Dana Evans to match Kelsey Mitchell's quickness. That is the thing. Because I know the last thing I'll say is, one thing that Martin and I always talk about with Caitlin being available is their pace wasn't just because, Caitlin's on the ball, pushing the ball up the floor, her get-ahead passes, the deep outlet passes. Kelsey Mitchell does all that stuff as well. Mm-hmm. And when you add on to the fact that she's quick, it makes it really hard to contain her. They're going to need Dana Evans on the floor, because Dana Evans can match her quickness. Dana Evans, I think, is going to be able to keep up with her and stay attached to her. And, that's going to be important. It's going to be really, really important.
So what I would like to see potentially tactically, I'm going to trust Coach Hammond and the Aces player scouting department more on this. But if you let Jackie start and close the game on Kelsey and then ate up the middle minutes, say after the first 7 minutes of the game, all the way up until the last 7 minutes of the game with Dana, Jewel and let Jackie be a roamer. Because the thing with Kelsey that makes her so dynamic is once she gets past the first layer of the defense, she can step back, she can drive all the way to the rim, she can pop from mid-range. I think it's going to be important that you need Jackie for offensive production as well. So if you have her chasing around, and she's obviously like in impeccable fitness, we're not saying anything about that.
Right.
You're going to want her to be used as a second line of defense because Kelsey is going to beat whoever is in front of her over and over again.
You will.
And you're going to need Jackie to not just be completely gassed.
Yeah.
This is a long series too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That was something I was thinking about is I think your three primaries are going to be Jewel, Dana, and then Jackie at the beginning and the end of the game, but we'll see how that plays out.
Man, that's going to be, you guys are right though about this. This is going to be big because I'm not going to lie. I don't think Jewel can keep up with Kelsey at all.
Not in the slightest.
At all. Like, not to say Jewel is slow or, you know, like you can be fast and still not be able to keep up with Kelsey Mitchell. Her level of speed is just, you know, it's just a different kind of speed to say that you can keep up with her. Jewel, if Jewel is on that's Indiana's going to go at that.
Oh, and it's the lateral quickness too that you point out all the time as well, Martin. It's not just the downhill up. It's not just the north to south. It's the east to west as well. And I think that is where Jewel is going to have a problem. Is the east to west, which is why I think getting Dana out there can help with that for sure.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about with Indiana's. So they're going to test Vegas with the speed of Kelsey Mitchell, with the physicality of Aliyah Boston, with their coaching, with their discipline, with their grit. So I think about, and we're getting ready to talk about Minnesota and Phoenix, Dan. I can't help but think whoever comes out of that Minnesota and Phoenix series is going to be ready to win the title. Like, and I'm not trying to like compare one side to the other as far as the brackets or whatever, but I just think the Minnesota Phoenix matchup is so like they are going to battle and test each other to the core. Indiana's going to, you know, listen, Indiana's not at full strength, but the way that they're playing right now, their belief and their discipline and their grit, like, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas swept this. I wouldn't be surprised. A couple close games, maybe one game by more. And I'm not trying to. I don't want to say I believe Indiana can be competitive. I'm just saying I think Vegas is, you know, they are that much better, that much more talented. If they're playing their best basketball, they could win 3 games straight and be done with this. But I am giving Indiana the credit to say Indiana is not going to stop competing. And so in that sense, I think they are about to get Vegas ready for, because I always think about that, Dan. I'm like, how is this matchup going to prepare? How does the road and the matchups prepare you for the next matchup, the next round? Are you being tested enough? Minnesota, Phoenix, whoever comes out of that is going to be, I mean, they might be a little beat up and a little battered, right?
But battle tested and ready to go.
Right. But they're going to be battle tested, bro. You know what I mean? They're going to come out of that. Who is next? Vegas, come on. Who's next? Like, we just got through with Alyssa Thomas, or we just got through with Nafisa Collier. Like, you know, we're ready. So I think Indiana is ready to test Vegas enough for them to be like, okay, we need to really beat them. Like, we're not just better than them. We're going to have to actually beat them.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll just say too, very quickly, and this comment reminded me of it. So I actually appreciate this comment because I didn't think about it. The one thing, because I said earlier that these two teams haven't seen each other as presently constructed because of all that's changed since that beatdown.
I love this.
The one thing that I thought about is the one thing that will remain the same no matter what is we're going to see a lot of high ball screens.
Yeah. And handoffs.
Whether it's Aliyah Boston as the screener or whether it's Natasha Howard as a screener. And if you guys remember, before the Aces flipped this switch, when they were flirting with 500 the first half of the season going to the All-Star break, the one thing that Becky Hammon consistently lamented about and consistently raved and ranted and raved about in post-game pressers, in pre-game pressers, in those disgusting in-game coaching interviews that need to stop is Vegas's inability to guard the pick and roll. Like, regardless of who was or wasn't available, who was or wasn't on whichever team the last time these two teams played, Vegas is going to have to make sure they guard those screens correctly. It won't matter who the primary defender is on Kelsey Mitchell. It won't matter whether or not Jackie Young is the second line of defense or not. It won't matter whether or not Jewel Lloyd is quick or fast or whatever. If they don't guard the screens correctly, Kelsey Mitchell is going to go off. And just like we think when you think every other team, just like every other player in Indiana, when Kelsey Mitchell gets hot, it is very, very hard.
Yeah.
They usually try to get her hot off of those screens. That's how it all starts.
Yeah.
Because then she can start driving. She can do those steps back to talking about, Dan. And it just, so yeah, that.
Yeah. Once they get her, when they get her moving, that's when she's most dangerous. But Dan, you know, that's a great comment. That's an interesting point, Dan. You just said how you put up a compilation. I hadn't seen it, but you said you put out a 5-minute video of Kelsey Mitchell turning the corner. I think people want to try to go under screens to negate her speed. Because if you try to stay attached, if you try to go over the top of the screen, Marcus, her speed is just, it's tough. And like sometimes going under puts you at a disadvantage. Clearly she can shoot. Usually you go under screens on players like Rondo, you know, non-shooting player, Alyssa Thomas, you try to get under because they're not going to step back for the shot. But Kelsey Mitchell, who you know can shoot, she's just so fast. If you're committing to going over the top of the screen on Kelsey Mitchell, and so that means you're letting her go use the screen and then go into that space and create, that's a dangerous place to be in too. So sometimes I understand, skeptical football fan, why people go under those screens, Dan, because like sometimes you need to just take a step back and prepare because you assume she's going to come at you downhill. If you go over the top, you're giving her a lane to get downhill.
I just think she's too efficient, especially in those sequences, because I literally watched every single field goal she made this year, like yesterday. And when you trail her, what I think you get to do is you get to turn her into a playmaker if your backline defense is really good. Now, the reason why I am a bit of a contrarian and I think AB is the best player on Indiana is because Kelsey is remarkably dynamic offensively and efficient, but her assist rate isn't as tremendous as you might think it would be for someone who is as fast as she is. And so what I'm not saying is that this is a solve. It's a pick your poison situation here. But if you're going to trail her and you're going to keep people locked to the people that she's spraying out to, and Asia Wilson is your back line, then the choice for her becomes I take a floater or a contested Asia Wilson shot instead of that whole dynamic range of things that she can do when you go under the screen on her. So, yeah, and what'll be really interesting is just to see game 2 and 3 what their defensive scheme looks like, because it's a little bit of a crapshoot in this first game, given all of the ambiguity with all the changes that have taken place since the last time they played in July. But the more that we've talked about this, the more excited I am, because this is a coaching series. And, man, Stephanie White and Becky Hammon just getting into the weeds, and let's see who's got the best scheme cooked up. And I'm genuinely excited about that.